What if the worst day of your life was someone else's biggest payday? A hurricane destroys your town. A pandemic shuts down your job. A war forces you from your home. And while you're trying to survive, someone is profiting off the chaos, seizing land, rewriting laws, privatizing everything. It's not a bug in the system, it is the system. And it has a name: disaster capitalism. This isn't just about corruption or bad timing. It's about a global economic model that sees human suffering not as a tragedy, but as a business opportunity. The term disaster capitalism was popularized by journalist and author Naomi Klein, especially in her book The Shock Doctrine. It describes a pattern where governments and corporations exploit natural disasters, wars, or economic collapses to push through policies that benefit the wealthy, often at the expense of everyone else. The playbook is simple: wait for or manufacture a crisis, then use that moment of fear, distraction, and instability to impose sweeping changes that would be politically impossible in normal times. And once the crisis passes, the damage is permanent. Let's take it back to Hurricane Katrina in 2005. New Orleans was devastated. Over 1,000 people died. Homes and schools were destroyed. But even before the floodwaters receded, corporate consultants and government officials swooped in, not just to rebuild, but to reshape the city. Public housing was demolished instead of repaired. Public schools were replaced with charter schools. Entire black communities were displaced under the guise of revitalization. Disaster recovery became a privatization gold rush, and the city that returned looked nothing like the one that was lost. But this model didn't start in New Orleans. After the US-backed coup in Chile in 1973, economist Milton Friedman and the Chicago Boys helped design a new economy for the Pinochet dictatorship, deregulating industries, privatizing pensions, and selling off public assets. It was a real-life experiment in free market shock therapy, launched in the aftermath of a violent political crisis. The same model was later exported to Iraq after the 2003 invasion, where US firms profited off reconstruction contracts while the country's own infrastructure remained in ruins. Democracy was promised. Deregulation was delivered. This is disaster capitalism in action. Use shock, chaos, or fear to bypass public debate and fast-track a new economic order, one that benefits the few and displaces the many. In the aftermath of September 11th, defense contractors and private security firms saw massive profits. The war on terror opened up a $1 trillion market in surveillance, military tech, and privatized warfare. Companies like Halliburton and Blackwater thrived while civil liberties shrank and foreign civilians paid the highest price. Disaster capitalism feeds on fear, and fear was in endless supply. The COVID-19 pandemic gave us a more recent personal example. As millions lost jobs, homes, and loved ones, billionaires saw their wealth surge. Amazon's profits skyrocketed. Pharmaceutical companies received billions in public funding, only to turn around and price gouge medications. Eviction moratoriums were lifted while landlords bought up distressed properties. And small businesses shut down while corporate chains moved in and took over. In some cities, tech firms used the pandemic to push for deregulated zoning, remote work tax breaks, and even privatized public space. Every crisis reveals who the system is built to protect. And disaster capitalism ensures that the recovery always favors those already on top. But here's where it gets even more dangerous. Social media platforms have become part of the crisis engine, not just in spreading misinformation, but in helping normalize this cycle. Platforms like Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok don't just reflect the news, they shape how we interpret it. And increasingly, they incentivize shock, fear, and outrage. In the wake of a disaster, viral posts often follow two paths: conspiracy or commodification. On one side, influencers promote doomsday narratives, selling prepper kits and survival gear. On the other, corporate accounts post solidarity messages while quietly lobbying for deregulation behind the scenes. Meanwhile, fundraisers for struggling families compete with ad campaigns from companies cashing in on the same disaster. Disaster becomes content becomes distraction, and distraction ensures that no one's watching when the deals get signed. Disaster capitalism doesn't just reshape economies, it rewrites memory. After a crisis, the dominant narrative is rarely shaped by survivors. It's built by those who own the cameras, control the real estate, and rewrite the rules. The hurricane hits, the news crews roll in, and soon a new version of the city emerges. Glossier, more expensive, and less inclusive. The communities that were hit hardest are often written out of the recovery plan entirely, but survivors remember. In New Orleans' Lower Ninth Ward, residents spent years trying to rebuild after Katrina, only to find their homes razed and their neighborhoods deemed unviable. In Puerto Rico, after Hurricane Maria, locals pushed back against hedge funds and crypto investors who saw the island as a tax haven. And in Flint, Michigan, where a man-made water crisis poisoned thousands, residents didn't just suffer, they organized, demanded answers, and refused to be erased. This is key. Disaster capitalism only thrives when people are too overwhelmed to resist. The strategy depends on speed, confusion, and silence. It's why disasters are immediately followed by closed-door deals, fast-tracked policies, and sweeping changes while the public is still grieving. That's why slowing down, questioning the recovery narrative, and demanding accountability is so powerful. And that's also where social media enters the battlefield. Unlike traditional media, which often follows official narratives, social media can offer raw, unfiltered truth. Anyone with a phone can document injustice, call for help, or start a movement. During recent wildfires, floods, and political uprisings, TikTok and Instagram served as lifelines, amplifying mutual aid efforts, exposing corporate negligence, and organizing protests. But the same platforms can also distort, distract, or suppress. The algorithm doesn't reward depth, it rewards speed and outrage. That makes it easy for misinformation to trend, and for corporate spin to dominate the narrative. After each disaster, there's a race, not just to rebuild infrastructure, but to control the story. Who is responsible? Who deserves aid? What communities matter? Corporate PR teams, influencers, and even governments flood the feed with curated narratives. We're rebuilding stronger. This is an opportunity. We're all in this together. But if you look closely, the recovery often skips the most vulnerable. Rents go up, jobs disappear, public services shrink, and those who lost the most gain the least. Take COVID-19. While tech CEOs pushed glowing visions of remote work and digital transformation, millions of essential workers, nurses, grocery clerks, delivery drivers, risked their lives daily. They didn't get bonuses. Many didn't get healthcare. And when back to normal came, it meant more exploitation, less protection, and no safety net. The narrative said resilience. The reality was sacrifice. Disaster capitalism isn't just opportunism. It's a system, a deliberate model that uses crisis as fuel for profit. It tells us that sacrifice is necessary, that pain builds character, and that if we just deregulate a little more, things will get better. But the evidence says otherwise. Each crisis leaves behind deeper inequality, weaker public systems, and stronger private monopolies. But none of this is inevitable. People have fought back through protests, policy, organizing, and storytelling. They've exposed corrupt deals, stopped privatizations, and forced governments to provide basic protections. What makes disaster capitalism powerful is its ability to hide behind urgency and emotion. What makes it vulnerable is public memory, media attention, and collective resistance. And that's where creators like you and viewers like yours come in. By asking questions, telling the full story, and spotlighting injustice, we resist the erasure that follows every crisis. We hold the powerful accountable, not just for the disaster, but for what comes after. And we remind each other that recovery doesn't have to mean return to inequality. Because behind every crisis is a choice. Exploit or rebuild. Extract or protect. Silence or speak. And in that choice, we define what kind of society we want to live in next.